Hi everyone, welcome back to Lifting the Lamp. I'm Frater Eleftheria, and let me begin this video by asking you a question. What do you think is necessary for you to live a happy and prosperous life? This is a question we all ask ourselves at some point, and I certainly have asked myself this question, and when we do ask it, we often find that society has tried to give us the answer already. Society has bludgeoned us with its idea of what success and prosperity means and what fulfillment means, what sort of things bring fulfillment in life. And it invariably revolves around something to do with getting ahead, being self-sufficient, self-reliant, going it alone, being the best, being better than everybody else, and just, not sharing with other people, not treating other people with kindness, in fact being quite ruthless towards other people, and jealously hoarding resources, and not wanting to give away any of your power or autonomy. And then you rise up the greasy pole of the social hierarchy, and that's how you become successful and prosperous, and that's how you have nice things. And that's what we've been taught to believe. That's how you have a happy life. That's what we've been taught to believe. But what if I told you that the truth of the matter is the very opposite of that? And, when you're someone like me who's been very interested in spirituality, and you've come across lots of wisdom in your time, and you apply that wisdom to the problems of society, some interesting things start to unravel. And one of the things that I have found is that the true answer to prosperity and happiness and abundance in life is actually something which involves going in the exact opposite direction that society has told us to go in to get all of those things. And that in fact, while we're taught that being individualistic and selfish is the way to get more out of life and squeeze more out of life, actually it's a path to ruin. And if you really want to build towards the greatest possible abundance, the best way that you can do that is by being kind to other people and building communities with other people and sharing with other people. And that is where you get the most abundance. Not just in terms of material abundance, which is the only type of abundance that this society recognizes, but even more valuable than that, the kinds of relationships that you build, being able to live from the heart and interact with other people from the heart, which is far more valuable than any resource, any physical resource that we can imagine. And so the purpose of tonight's video is to talk to you about these themes, which I like to think of as the poverty of selfishness and the prosperity of kindness. And I want to talk about the different ways that kindness and community and cooperation and sharing can truly benefit our lives. First, I want to talk about the community level, how that can happen. And then I want to talk about friends and family, how it's reflected there. And then I want to talk about how being kind to each other and being cooperative as a species is hardwired into our physiology. And there are certain things that are just in our bodies that reward us and make us feel good when we're kind, and can cause damage to our health when we're unkind. And then at last, I want to talk about, well, if this is so fundamental, if this is such a huge thing, a huge secret to success in life, why is it that this knowledge is not taught or encouraged? And I want to try and answer that question for you. So that's what we're covering tonight. Probably another big video, but plenty of really, things that I think are important bits of knowledge to spread in these uncertain times when we've lost faith in all of our institutions and we're looking for something some solid foundation that we can rebuild on. And I think this is a good place to start. So first, I want to talk about the level of the community. Because, when we're in a community, the way that we're taught is the natural way to be by all of our cultural institutions, by the media, by entertainment, even by the kinds of ways of thinking that we learn going through the education system. All of that kind of conditions us to think that we need to keep up with the Joneses. We have to find a nice suburb that makes us look good and gives us status. The fact that we live there, even if we need to put ourselves in a unimaginable level of debt just to have that status. The same applies for the car we drive, even if we have to get finance on it. And the whole white picket fence idea that we have to have this perfect little part of the community, and we have to be better than everybody else, and we have to get ahead of everybody else, and we have to get ahead in the workplace as well, and in that community, and that's how we're ultimately going to thrive, just through ruthless competition to get more than other people. But living in that way actually causes a lot of problems that go unacknowledged, which ultimately leave us worse off down the line. In contrast, if we create neighborhoods, if we create communities where there's a high level of mutual trust and cooperation, we actually find ourselves each individually being better off as a result of being able to have that cooperative relationship with one another. So let me demonstrate this by way of a few examples. With the rise of social media, there's been a lot of really awful things that have happened, and awful kind of communities that have formed that are just a cesspit. But by the same token, there have been a lot of pages that have caused a flourishing of community at a grassroots level, and it's had some very interesting results. And this is something that I learnt witnessing my wife joining certain pages and the benefits that came from that. Community-based pages, I mean. So, for example, there is a Buy Nothing page on Facebook for our community. And this is an incredible thing. It's actually like an alternative economy within the local community. So if you have something, an item that somebody else wants, you give them the item for free. And then, if they have something that you want, that they no longer want, they will give it to you. And it's not exactly a barter economy, but there's kind of like a goodwill and a good faith between people that if the other person's in need, that there will be something that they can get. And so it's a way of getting things for free, and it's a way of building relationships with people. So really, there's no downside. And if you weren't giving and taking via something like a Buy Nothing page, what would you be doing instead? Say you want a TV. You could, if you're really down on your luck, you could employ the Los Angeles method and just steal somebody else's TV and cause harm to another person in the process, and cause an injustice in the process. Or if you have means, or perhaps if you don't have means, you could buy a brand new TV. And so, this is a way of making sure that you always have the best of everything all the time. Only the best will do. But here's the thing, you don't need the newest TV. You don't need the newest bit of furniture. In fact, it's probably better if you get something made 20 years ago, because everything that's made these days is made to break after 2 years anyway. You'll probably end up having the thing that you bought 20 years ago for longer than the thing that you bought 1 year ago. And so, you can save your own resources by not spending money that you don't have to. And you cannot be wasteful if you just let go of your pride of not wanting other people to have the nice things that you have. Then instead of wasting your resources, you can give them to somebody else that really needs it. And although there might not be an immediate benefit to you, in the future, it's going to more likely create a situation where you will receive free stuff from somebody else. And so you've actually ended up better off than if you had just acted in an individualistic way in the pursuit of certain items of personal property. And in fact, everybody is better off under that arrangement. And it doesn't just apply to items that you might need around the house. There's community libraries where people can, put books in a cabinet in a public place and exchange one book for the other. And so everyone is kind of sharing each other's books instead of having to go out and buy new books all the time. You can apply the same principle to toy libraries, party libraries, these items that you would usually, buy once and then discard. Single-use items that just create waste and waste your money, when in fact there's another way of gaining that resource that is cooperative and actually builds community. Traveling suitcases is another example of this. If a pregnant woman needs maternity clothes or something like that, instead of just buying them, they can borrow one from the traveling suitcase, and then when they're done with it, somebody else can borrow it. And so you keep building relationships with other people, which are based on goodwill, which are immensely beneficial, certainly much more beneficial than the alternative, where the only relationship that you're building is with a thing that won't even last for very long. And there's plenty more examples of this, carpooling to work instead of, sitting in traffic for half an hour or an hour, with a glum face, taking turns at carpooling with another person who's going to the same destination as you, saving money on petrol, having company for the drive, reducing the congestion on the roads. All of these benefits just from people cooperating with each other. Working out from the level of, say, the local neighborhood or whatever, you can build similar kinds of communities in the workplace. And, even with clubs and associations that can provide benefits to you that you wouldn't otherwise have. So, for example, there used to be a time many decades ago where if you work in a trade or even, blue collar or white collar work, you would join the trade union. And by unionizing, your rights as a worker are protected. There's more negotiating power with business and with your employers to make sure that you're paid fairly. And so everyone benefits by chipping in and being part of this community organization. And we've really lost sight of that now. But it's a real shame that we lost sight of the value of having unions in the workplace. And, another example of this is credit unions. So, now when we want to buy something expensive, which might be something that we don't really need, like I've just demonstrated, and which I'll continue to demonstrate, we need to take a loan from the bank. But of course, the banks aren't there with our best interests at heart. They have exorbitant interest rates that they charge. They've got all these ridiculous fees, and so they just end up shafting people and not treating them fairly when people need to service their debt. But there used to be a time where people formed things called credit unions, which were kind of run by a particular community, such as a police association or a nurses association, and it would give benefits to its members, such as giving them loans at a very low interest rate. And then, there are other community organizations, clubs and associations, which have historically given loans at no interest rate. So, you don't need to be shafted by the banks if such grassroots community organizations exist and perform that function. The Freemasons, very famous or perhaps infamous for helping each other out a lot. And so this is another example of how building communities benefits everyone. You chip in a little bit, everyone chips in a little bit to keep these organisations and these services going, and then everybody gets immense benefits from that continuing on. And these days, union membership is often, tax deductible anyway. So really, you're not paying anything, and in return, you're getting a pay rise that you might not have got, or might not have been as high, were it not for that organisation. And all this comes from building communities. Building communities costs you nothing. It's not like starting a business. You need capital to start off with. Building communities costs you nothing. You just have to go outside and talk to the person on the same street as you, and talk to people in public, and build networks and build relationships. Everybody can form communities from the slums, right up to the gated communities. It costs you nothing, but there's everything to gain. Don't be atomized. Don't be an isolated individual just looking at your phone all day, not talking to any real people. That is your weakest possible position in life. Go out, find a community, find people who can support you and who you can support, and start to build those kinds of relationships again. Another way we used to take this for granted, but nowadays has been eroded immensely, is with friends and family. I mean, family, let's start with family. Attacked since the 1960s by the dominant cultural institutions. Next to trade unions, next to churches, is perhaps, which coincidentally enough have also been under significant attack in the past few decades, the family is one of the most important, most essential networks, communities, support structures that we have, or have had historically. And so many people are doing it tough right now because they're trying to do things as one person or two people that in the past, would have been shared by the whole family, the whole community, the whole village, whatever. But now, because we want to be independent, we try and take it all on ourselves, and the cost of it ourselves, and that is why people are burnt out and stressed all the time. So let me give some examples of this. Perhaps the most striking example is with the raising of children. Everybody works now. There's no longer, in a lot of situations, there's no longer a partner who stays at home and looks after the children while the other person works. And sometimes it's because, they can't afford to do that, because real wages have not been keeping up with inflation, so that now you do need a double income household just to be able to support a family. But there are a lot of cases where even people who can afford to just have a single income, both partners are encouraged to go to work, so they can have financial independence, as though, they're going to be treated better by some soulless corporation that they work for than, the person that they love. And that's somehow a form of financial freedom, when you can get fired at any moment just for the smallest act of disobedience. But this is what we've been brainwashed to believe. And so now, where before you would have, I'm not saying it has to be one gender or the other, but where you would have one partner who stays home and raises the child, whoever's in the best position to do that, instead everyone's sending their kids to childcare. And this has got a few effects. One is that quite often childcare is so expensive that to afford the childcare, the other partner has to start working, or at least working more, just to pay for the childcare. So, for example, in Australia, where I am, they did some research, and the average amount that a family will pay on childcare, if they were to send their child to childcare every weekday throughout the year, it would cost them $30,000 a year. $30,000 Australian. It's about 20,000 US. But that is a part-time job. And so you've got this absurd situation where you're going to work so you can't see your child, so that you can pay for somebody else to raise your child, when you could just potentially work less or not at all and stay home and raise that child without that expense of the childcare and the need for the job to pay for the childcare. And so what's the benefit there? And then, you know, on top of that, you've got, you know, the fact that there's all these horror stories of neglect of children in daycare centres. And, you know, it's just a breeding ground for all kinds of diseases that the child brings home into the household, and everyone's sick all the time. Why? Why? When there could just be a parent who stays home and raises the child, or, and this is where the community bit comes into it, if the parent can't raise the child themselves, you have family who can look after the child while you're working or whatever. And that's the role that family used to play. When we had a more communal society, it was the whole village that raised the child, and we recognized the value in that. And, you know, but we don't have that now because families are being destroyed by modern society. And there's actually propaganda to deliberately destroy and undermine the family. And it's really sad because that is a community support structure that played a huge role in raising children, and it's gone, and it puts more stress on couples. It leads to, you know, strained relationships, higher divorce rates, more dysfunction in children because there's, you know, they've got more childhood wounds because of a rocky start to life, you know, in a high conflict, high pressure family situation. And it's just got cascading negative effects from just losing that family community. You know, and nowadays in families, extended families, and, you know, even in marriages, sadly, or relationships, we've lost this concept of, I want to spend time with you and I want to do nice things for you because I love you and I want what's best for you. Instead, everything has become transactional. It's become all about me, me, me. What can I get out of this relationship? What can I use this person for? And so, you know, we don't think that we should be obliged. We don't see the point of helping family out anymore because we don't have those values anymore. And we view relationships differently. And in the context of, you know, partner relationships, you know, there's this annoying term that people use now of like emotional labor. Like, I don't want to do his emotional labor, you know, when he comes home and complains about work or whatever. Like, you know, but isn't that just a horrible, cold way of being? To see showing compassion and support towards your significant other as a chore that you have to do, and treating it like it's another job that you're keeping, you know, on the books to make sure that you get repaid exactly the amount that you've given. You know, that's not how a loving relationship works. That's how a transactional relationship works. A loving relationship, you give not expecting anything in return. And perhaps if the other person doesn't give enough in return, it becomes unworkable. But the point is, you don't do something just for what you can get. And you don't expect something back, and you trust that the other person is going to treat you as well as you treat them. And you build that over time, and that's the basis of the relationship. Not, what can I get? You know, being independent and making this other person work for me, and establishing the power in the relationship, which is how we're unfortunately encouraged to perceive relationships these days, which is why they don't last, by the way. And even this idea of leaving the nest, you know, back in the day, say 100 years ago or more, it was quite common for the children to stay in the family home until quite late and, well into adult life. And in fact, it was quite common for elderly parents to live with their children to be taken care of. And so, the family, again, formed this support structure, whereas now we've become so individualistic and we just want everything to ourselves that, parents are encouraged to just kick out their kids when they turn 18, and children are encouraged to leave the house as soon as they can once they reach the age of maturity, or they're like a loser. Like the loser who's, an adult and still lives in his parents' basement, which was everybody once upon a time. But then our values changed and we became more individualistic and we became obsessed with being independent at all costs. Even if it means that there is, one person living in a house, doing chores, paying the rent or the mortgage when there could be several, and even if it means that we have no support as the cost of our independence. If we just knew how to treat each other well, it wouldn't be a burden to be around other people. It would actually make life a lot more enjoyable. We're a social species. We need to socialize. We need to be around other people. I'm somebody who's on the autism spectrum. I'm not supposed to like socializing. I'm supposed to just, prefer to be cloistered away, obsessing over my interests. But even I find that, after some time of not seeing people, it feels really isolating and it can be really lonely. And so we need that connection. And if we don't have that, it affects our mental health. It's not good to be socially isolated. This is something that's acknowledged. And of course, whether it's family or our friend group, it's something that we need to not only maintain our mental health, to see people that we like and just have fun with them and have a good time with them, but also to have a sympathetic ear if we need it, and to provide that in turn, and that can often be the difference between how well people's mental health fares or doesn't, is what support that they have. And it begins with family and friends. Sometimes, people don't always come from the best families. You can't choose your family, but you can at least choose your friends. And friendships are important. And a burden shared is a burden halved, and many hands make light work. And there's all of these truisms that people say to illustrate that, when you have a group of people, like a group of friends, to help you with something, it makes it better for everyone. And, but again, that's something that seems to be disappearing. Particularly men, are more socially isolated than ever. They're staying at home playing video games by themselves instead of going out and forming groups of friends, and that is having a detrimental impact to their well-being. But it's not something that is isolated to any particular gender. Across the board, we need to get off social media and actually have IRL relationships. When we're talking to the person, we need to be able to feel them. To give them a hug, we need to be able to see them vividly. And, we need to be able to have a proper experience of an interaction with a human being. To watch their body language, to fully engage with them when we're speaking with them, to remove the anonymity of a computer screen and a keyboard that allows our cruelest nature to come forth without any potential to feel guilty by seeing how the reaction of the other person and how we hurt them. Let's normalize getting out into the real world again and having friendships and networking with people in the real world again. Forget about all this VR stuff. Just forget that. Go outside. For goodness sake, talk to real people. And the last sort of thing I want to talk about tonight is the physical benefits of kindness towards people and forming relationships with people within a community. Because, I've demonstrated the economic benefits, I think, the psychological benefits, and, just the benefits in terms of our ability to survive and thrive in life. But there's also a benefit to fostering kindness among people at a physiological, biological level. That's how hardwired this is. So, even though our modern society indoctrinates us into thinking that human nature is all about competition and it's all about, being forced to compete with other people so that only the strongest survives, and that is our core drive. Actually, our core drive is kindness, and it can be demonstrated with science. So the first point that I would like to make, which is in many ways obvious, is that it feels really good for us to receive kindness from another person. And this is so crucial, in fact, that it is crucial to our development as a child. So a year ago, I got to witness the miracle of birth of a child coming into the world. And, I got to learn all about the relationship between the mother and the child, and what a healthy relationship for the child to survive and thrive should look like. And, when the child first comes out of the mother's womb and is born, those first moments are crucial. And what is supposed to happen is that the baby is supposed to lay on the chest of the mother, skin to skin contact. They're supposed to feel each other, and the baby is supposed to crawl and find how to feed for the first time. And all of this is a very intimate physical experience with a lot of contact. And, and that is actually something that is crucial to releasing the right kinds of hormones in the woman's body for it to be able to do what it needs to do. And it creates that bond. And regular physical contact between a small child and its parents is actually, science has shown, essential to that baby being able to thrive. So, something that seems as trivial in some sense as just physical contact is actually something which is essential to our human development. And this continues on later in life. Hugs have been shown to release endorphins, improve overall mental health, releasing endorphins, which reduces pain, reducing our stress levels, all these wonderful things, just from physical contact. That's all about receiving kindness. But, science also tells us that it feels really good when we give to other people, when we are the ones that perform the act of kindness. So it's been shown that when we perform acts of kindness, it triggers the reward center in our brain, and then our body releases all kinds of important chemicals like oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin, all of which are crucial kind of pleasure chemicals for the brain and for the body. That is the kind of rush that we get when we perform acts of kindness, because our bodies want us to be kind. That is how infused in our being the desire to be kind to one another really is. And it's a desire that we need to honor, and that we need to give an opportunity to express itself. Because not only are we depriving the other people of kindness and generosity, we're actually depriving ourselves of a really fulfilling experience. And doing acts of kindness can reduce stress, it can reduce anxiety, it can reduce depression even, because of all of those reasons. But in contrast, if you look at the physiological effect on somebody who lives opposite to those values. Somebody who is very selfish, someone who's very entitled, who's never happy, who feels like they've never got enough, who feels like they always are jealous of other people, need to get ahead of other people, somebody who's, always attacking other people to defend their bruised ego, somebody who, lives by the values that the world, that society wants us to adopt. It's a very different picture. These people are under a lot of stress, and so their bodies release a lot of the stress hormone cortisol. And this actually, if you are stressed for prolonged periods of time and your body releases a lot of cortisol, it can actually have detrimental impacts, not only on your mental health, but also can directly impact your physical health. So your emotional state can directly impact your physical health. Have you ever noticed that if you've been stressed out for a long time and under a lot of pressure, and suddenly that pressure goes away, you get sick, and perhaps you haven't been sick in a very long time, and it's unusual for you to get sick? That's because your body's immune system is weakened when you're in a constant state of stress. And similarly, you can develop other problems like high blood pressure, heart problems, stomach ulcers, all of these physiological effects from having too much stress, which we carry with us in our bodies. So all of this sounds really good, and some of these examples are really obvious things that are just ways that we should behave in the world. So why don't more people behave like this? Part of the reason is just that human nature is quite flawed, quite ignorant, to use the Abrahamic faith's kind of language, very sinful, fallen even. And I've spoken a bit about whether human nature is evil in another one of my recent videos, which I'll link in the description below. But that doesn't explain everything. That's the core of the problem. But there are also lots of ways that this particular society is structured which exacerbate the problem. And there's been experiments run, like the Stanford prison experiment, which was the subject of the book by Philip Zimbardo called The Lucifer Effect, and also similarly the Milgram experiment, which show that when you set up certain structures, power structures, and you put people within those, it encourages them to act in the worst possible way towards their fellow human being, to form dominance hierarchies, to exploit their power over others, to dehumanize the other person, and of course just pitting people against each other by creating imposed scarcity and then turning everybody against each other. These are the various ways in which society encourages us to act in a selfish way that is against other people, and not to encourage us to cooperate and to be kind to one another. And just by convincing us that it is human nature to behave in that brutal way, and that human nature is not more complex than that, or perhaps has more redeeming qualities than that. And that's the propaganda that we're taught. But why? Well, the reason is because, speaking of hierarchies and power structures, we have a very definite power structure in this supposedly free society that we live in. If you haven't noticed that, you haven't been paying attention, and it's time to start paying attention. There is a small group at the top who own and control everything, who seek to dominate the rest of us and want us to remain where we are while they continue to get everything, all of the resources, to amass as much wealth and power as they possibly can at everybody else's expense. And those are the people, through the institutions that are ultimately under their control, such as the media and the entertainment industry, these are the people that are pushing this kind of idea of everyone. And the reason is twofold. One is because that's the way that they think. That is their pathology, which causes them to see other people as just things to be used and themselves as the important person in the world. That's how they think. And they're also vain and proud. So they think that their own worldview is the way that the whole world is. And so that's how they tell other people they should be. But there's also a more cynical reason for it, which is that it's about dividing people. If everybody is against everybody else, then we can't unite at our full strength and be strong together as a people. And because if we do have that strength, if we know of our own power and how it depends upon our cooperation with each other, then their power will suddenly be seriously challenged, because we are many, they are few. And when we realize our own power, because we outnumber them so much, then they won't have a leg to stand on in terms of maintaining their power and control over us. And so that is why teaching people how to cooperate with each other, to build communities, to build solidarity with each other is so dangerous to those that are in power. The cracks are starting to appear in their system, and the veneer of civility of their system, and so they're becoming more desperate than ever to grab as many resources as they can and to berate us as much as they can, and trying to make us sacrifice more. And they're panicking because more and more people are waking up to the reality of the situation, what they represent, and also waking up to the fact that there are alternatives. And a lot of the Enlightenment philosophers, they tried to describe society, and one such kind of method for describing society that was popular for a time was the social contract theory, that there is a contract between the governed and those that govern. And the social contract is broken now. They haven't upheld their end of the bargain. And so with any contract that it has been breached so badly, it's null and void. The good news is we can renegotiate the social contract to give ourselves more power and them less, or even cut them out completely if we're ready to do that. And so that's what I've tried to demonstrate with this video. But I hope that what has also come through in this video, that it's not about different economic systems necessarily. That is the thing that helps people to be stronger in their communities. It's actually the underpinning moral values that people have, and the ability of people to connect to their heart and then connect with each other from the heart center. And that is the foundation, because ultimately you can have mutually beneficial systems that still base around a transaction rather than a relationship of love, which is what we really need to cultivate. And that needs to become the foundation of our communities. That needs to be the thing that we all mutually agree that we're going to practice because it benefits everyone. And we need to make that into the new game theory. Because ultimately, we need a change in our society. I mean, just look at the state of our society. We need a change. And we need some really radical alternatives to what we have. But the most radical thing of all is kindness. The most revolutionary thing that you can do to challenge the unjust system that we currently live under is to practice kindness towards one another. It's more revolutionary than any insurrection, any kind of riot, anything like that. It's actually more dangerous to the establishment if we learn to love each other again. And by the way, that's the reason why the Roman Empire crucified Christ. So, armed with this knowledge, I want you to put down your phone, don't stay at home, go outside, talk to other people, face to face, not just on social media, and actually build those relationships again. The power of love, the power of kindness, it's not just some cheesy idea like it often gets portrayed by the same media that I just spoke about, the same entertainment industry that I just spoke about. It's actually a very powerful idea. And I hope that I've demonstrated in this video the importance of kindness to our ability to thrive as a species on multiple different levels. It's actually essential to our long-term survival as a civilization. And so I hope that by sharing this knowledge, I can help that process along, because that's how we're going to get where we need to get. You know, we're transitioning from one way of being, one system that we organize society under, to another better one, and understanding this knowledge is going to be a big part of that. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe to this channel to support my work, leave any comments that you have down below, and if you want to support me further, hit join or thanks down below. But thank you again for listening, and I'll see you next time.